Sometimes the right thing to do is the opposite of what you want to do. And the key isn't to just default to your natural tendencies, especially if you're doing something like, I don't know, following Jesus. Because like if you want to build a religion around following your natural tendencies, that's one thing. But if you're willing to be suspicious of your own fears and interrogate your own fears and say, okay, where does this fear genuinely inform me of an actual risk scenario?
Welcome to the Masters of Integration podcast. We aim to change the narrative from jack of all trades, master of none, to jack of all trades, master of integration. Join us as we talk to people who have discovered how to combine one thing with another so that they become whole. We will hear how their journeys have shaped who they have become and their unique successes. Our hope is that their stories will inspire you to find your purpose, discover who you are, and integrate your diverse passions and skills into your life. To being whole. Let's go. Thank you for joining the podcast. So the podcast is called Master of Integration.
Okay.
And so my goal is to hear from other people that I believe are masters of integration.
Okay.
So back in the 1500s, being a jack of all trades, right, used to be a positive trait, right?
Yeah.
That they were actually really good at what they were, everything they did. Then in the 1700s, an author added the three last words, master of none, which then changed this mentality of so many other people. So when I was growing up, I wanted to do all these different things. I wanted to be a dancer and all this stuff. And a little bit later, they're like, you're a jack of all trades. And I always thought, whether they said it or not, was like, oh, but you're a master of none.
Yeah, it's like an
implied
insult.
Exactly.
Yeah, implied insult.
Yeah. So my journey then started being like, but if that's true, do I really not master anything? And so then I found that like, actually being a jack of all trades, you're a master of integration. And so my hope is to encourage other people that, look, like we all do so many other things.
Yeah.
Some people more intentionally do one specific thing, but no matter what, we're always doing so many things. And some people have figured out a way to integrate all these different things to one thing. So for me, I believe like after 20 some years of doing multiple different things that I've learned how to integrate all of it together.
Yeah, yeah.
So this is the last episode of our pilot season. So we've done 6, you're the 7th.
Okay.
I want to talk to you because you're my pastor. I respect you. I'm inspired by a lot of things you talk about in your life, your family, right? You're a pastor. There's a lot of things I don't know about you as well, but you're a father, right? You're a husband, you're a manager, you're a businessman. I mean, like, right. You're like so many things.
Yeah.
But another part of this is Seth Godin. He wrote a book called Icarus Deception.
Okay.
And in it, he says that creativity and art is anything that connects us to another person.
Okay.
And so I've taken that belief and really said, okay, what does it mean to be an artist? Is to be able to connect to other people.
Yeah.
So this whole thing that I'm doing in this podcast is also to help transform my mentality and others, hopefully, to believe that like to be a better artist, to be a better person.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk to you because I feel like you do all of these things. You're like a true artist in the sense that you literally connect people on a regular basis.
That's true. Yeah.
And then like that photo I sent you, which I'll put it up, you'll see. Everyone rose their hands. You said, who have I sat down and had coffee with?
Yeah.
And, I mean, literally 90% of the room raised their hands. And there was at least 200 people there.
Yeah.
Blew my mind.
Yeah.
And that's when I even gained even more respect. Like this guy actually like cares about people.
Yeah. Correct.
So the reason why we've been having a hard time finding church, why we chose what we love you and your family.
Yeah.
Also just the character that you carry and how you run the church and everything like that. So with that being said, right, you're a communicator, you're then connecting other people together, you're a networker. So yeah, I wanted to talk to you and I'm curious to see what you think after I say all that.
Yeah.
That I called you a master of integration.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense, I think, because I think not for everybody, but for, let's say, a lot of people who become pastors, there is the tendency to become maybe like a theological specialist. So you go to grad school, you go to seminary, and seminary is good. I don't have anything bad to say about seminary. But in my experience, seminary prepares you to be a seminary student, right? It gives you a certain set of competencies, maybe some critical thinking, some biblical content. But I think my life is really not specialized. I've had to really stretch myself out of necessity. I'm a fairly curious person. I'm interested in a bunch of different things, but I have had to kind of expand and stretch the things that I do just out of necessity. And sometimes it's more than I want to do, to be completely honest with you, right? But I think that it overwhelmingly has been a good experience for me. And there are downsides though too. There's dangers to it too. We can talk about those later. Ask me about those later. I'm trying to remember who the author was. I think he wrote a book called The Book of Five Rings, and he was a sword fighter. And he said, at a certain level, if you want to be a better sword fighter, learn how to paint. And I think part of what he was getting at was that we aren't ants. We aren't necessarily made to be or completely intended to be totally exclusive radical specialists. That the things that we do and the things that we're good at, they feed each other, they pollinate each other. The things that we do in this area inform what we do in this area. And so I think that really at heart, what it means is that all of life is really connected, whether or not we realize that, right? Life is connected. Here's one example. So you want to learn the Bible. Great. Go to seminary, right, and learn the Bible. But I've lived here in Phoenix, Arizona for 10 years. I've studied the Bible my whole life. Turns out the more I learn about the desert, the more I understand the Bible.
Tell me more about that.
Yeah. How is that possible? The Bible is a desert document, overwhelmingly. The Bible is almost all arid. So it starts off in a garden, no problem. Ends in a city, no problem. But just look at the overarching story of the Bible. In a lot of cases, right? Even just the highlights. The Hebrews are enslaved in Egypt, desert. They're freed and they wander through the wilderness, desert. Make it to the promised land, desert. Get exiled from the promised land into Babylon, desert. Go back home, desert. Then you're with Jesus in the New Testament. So I mean, I grew up in the Midwest. You know, I never understood why the Bible characters in my coloring sheets had on all these long robes. I'm like, why is Abraham not wearing flip-flops and shorts and tank top? Like, I don't understand this. He knew exactly what he was doing because that's evaporative cooling. That's sunscreen. That's portable shade. And then once you understand the desert, you understand the Bible. Like the Psalms say that the Lord is my shade. We say shade like it's a bad thing, like we're throwing shade or they're acting shady. In the desert, shade is a good thing. And once you're here on the ground, you see it. All the animals come under the shade of a tree. All the new plants grow under the shade of a tree. It's 10 to 15 degrees cooler in the shade. So if you live in the desert, it's shade or die. You live in the shade. So when the Bible says the Lord is our shade, well, yeah, God protects you. God watches out for you. You see the life that exists in the shade that doesn't exist anywhere else. So there's a case where you can go to seminary and learn about the Bible if you want, or you can spend time in the desert and all kinds of things open up for you. That's integration, I think.
Yo, that's so good. I think that I'm gonna have to listen to this back like multiple times because I feel like this whole journey, this past like 7 episodes, right? I mean, just like in general, but being able to articulate over and over again, I think that was the best way to articulate it. And I wish I could repeat it back to you, but I'm glad it's recorded. Yeah. But I think there's a lot of ways I've been trying to explain to people, like everything is connected, everything comes together. Like we don't realize the whole point of also is that like, there's no wasted time when you go off and veer off to something else. You know, like for me, I wanted to do music and then now I'm doing video primarily. All that music experience was never wasted. I use it all the time, pacing, feeling, emotion.
We call some of those things detours because we think we're headed in a particular direction, but we call it a detour. You know what the word detour means? It means the way. The detour is the way.
Interesting.
Right. So that's what you're talking about, that what seems like a distraction, and we can get distracted, but sometimes a relentless laser focus doesn't help us.
Yeah.
Sometimes what looks like an obstacle, who I don't know if it's Marcus Aurelius or who said that the obstacle is the path or the detour is the path or the detour is the way. Like you have to believe, again, if you look at scripture, overwhelmingly, the story of God's people is not linear. It is not linear. And if you can accept that life is that journey, and if you believe, as I do, that God has a hand in crafting that road for us, the quickest way between 2 points is a straight line. But life does not always work out that way. And I think if we can embrace that, if we can accept the sort of creative opportunities of that, without diffusing our energy too badly, if we can work with that reality, I just think there's a lot of goodness and beauty and growth there.
It's so good. You know, I've been telling you, this is so good, man. Oh my goodness. It's crazy to have a conversation like this in this kind of context. Versus like, where's the spot we go to that you always say? Falafel, yeah.
You got snow.
Yeah, snow. Oh my gosh. That versus, you preaching. But then this is like a very concentrated conversation, very focused. And man, I just feel like you said so much already that I've already, because you have some of my favorite quotes right now. Like I ask every single person, what are your favorite quotes? Just, like give me your top two. And there's some really great ones, but the one I always will tell people, right, is like, it's not good news if it's not good news for the poor,
right?
Correct. And I think about this every day, anything that I'm doing, just like even the podcast and stuff like that, it's like, I mean, will they even be able to hear this? You know what I'm saying? But the things that we're trying to do, how does that impact others?
Right.
I've been really struggling with purpose lately, and like, what is this what I'm doing going to really impact those who are outside of on the edges, right? Like,
right.
How is this changing anything, And my hope is almost what you're saying is like these detours. And it's like really helpful for me actually to use that as a perspective to think the detour is not going out, is not like you're not getting misdirected, but that you're still going the same path. Like, I mean, you're still going to the same place, and it's the way. It's a really cool illustration, I guess. I'm just hoping that these detours of my life lead me and get me closer to the edges of where my heart desires or where I'm
for sure. I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but my own experience has been that God has used my experience as curriculum. So that the things I'm doing now, I never would have been able to do if I didn't have the cumulative experience, and all of that cumulative experience added up to a kind of training or a kind of preparation that I never would have had otherwise. I don't want people to, let's say, misuse their lives. I think it's possible to have great potential and to not make use of that potential. But as much as possible, if we can take a mentality that nothing is wasted, that good things, bad things can be sort of integrated into our life. I have a coach named Will. He's fantastic. One of the phrases he used it with me one time, and I never forgot it, was as you look back over the course of your life and you gradually accumulate more and more years and you do more and more things, the key with all of your life is to include and transcend. So include and transcend. So we're just honest about everything we've lived in our life, everything we've done, the good, the bad, not turning a blind eye to any of it, not pretending like it didn't happen, not being so ashamed of it we can never speak of it. But within ourselves, we include it. We are the sum total of everything we've done up until this point. And then transcend, so that we acknowledge and integrate everything we've done and everything we are, and say, we are all this and more. Wow. And I second guess myself. I look back over my shoulder all the time, more than I want to admit. And I love what I do, and I love what I am. I feel like I'm in an awesome place. Even in this place, though, I sometimes look over my shoulder, which is crazy, right? I always remembered that phrase, include and transcend. And I think that allows us to be honest about every facet of our life, and yet to not be fully defined by it.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna have to let that marinate for a little while, and I'll probably ask you all the time, like, help me understand this a little bit more.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Yeah, your accumulative life and knowledge can interpret that. I have a lot less, so I have to, it may take me a little more time to fully
No, you're good.
To get
you're
to
good, brother.
Understanding, but it's good that I have a point of a start to think about in that kind of way, right? So another thing I wanted to ask you about is, I kind of want to put on the table the different things that you do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So for example, this shirt. Right?
Yeah.
So all in.
Yeah.
Can you explain that to us?
Yeah. So I think we are building a church, a community. So church is first and foremost a group of people. We are building a church community, and our community has outgrown our facility. So we're basically a medium-sized church, a medium-sized group of people in a teeny tiny little box. The church has already got the land. It's always been the long-term goal to build. Now we're just going for it, right? So we're always going to continue to build the church, the community. And now we know that we have to build a church, a facility. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We're doing, let's say, really practical things like working with architects. We're working with project managers who've done this before. I know more about building design than I ever wanted to know. I'm a reluctant generalist on that one, right? Because I don't need to know all this stuff, but I do because I'm all in, right? I'm all in on all of this. And so I'm going to learn about plumbing and wiring and whatever else I need to learn to do this. So are we architecting? Are we constructing? Are we building a place? Yes, absolutely. Not apologizing for that. But the reason we want a facility is because facilities facilitate. Like, I'm not in this for property management. I'm not in this for building. I'm in this for people. And you can have a place without people. You can have an empty room. You can have an empty building. You can have a place without people, but you will never have people without a place. Anytime you've got a human being there, it doesn't matter what the place is, indoors, outdoors, big, small, there is always a place. And if we want to connect with people, if we want to connect people to people, if we want to connect people to God, we want to have a place for those people, a facility that facilitates Christian community. And so we call it all in because, again, it's not just about building the church facility, it's about building the church community. And because we are not a huge church, we're not really big, and this is a huge effort for us. So we kind of all need to be all in on this thing. We really need to, success is not guaranteed. And so we have to really go for it. And we are, I think.
Yeah. And how much are you trying to raise again?
Yeah. So $5 million.
And you've raised?
Yeah. So we believe by the end of the year, we're going to be at 3 million out of the 5, which would be fantastic.
That's crazy.
Yeah. It's super crazy. I'm from a small town. I've never taken out a loan on a car other than a house. We're debt free. This is way more zeros than I've ever dealt with before in my life. It's terrifying. I'm way, way outside of my comfort zone with, let's call it, the building part of it. But I think that this is the opportunity that's before us. God has opened some crazy doors. There's been some really miraculous experiences that we didn't expect. And it has also called forth from me, just personally, let's call it a level of boldness and a level of faith and a level of tenacity. I've grown in ways I may not have grown without the challenge. Just one example, after a lot of thought and prayer, and you know this, my wife and I have joyfully decided for us to give 1 year of my salary to the building fund.
Crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's because there's no hidden wealth. My wife works part-time. My dad died last year. I didn't get some big inheritance. There is no asterisk to this. We're just trying to lead by example. We're just trying to put our money where our mouth is. We're also trying to follow the example of people who love Jesus. If you know the story in the New Testament of Mary Magdalene, I think it's in John 12, I could have that wrong, where she comes in, she washes the feet of Jesus, and she has this jar of really expensive perfume. She breaks it open and she anoints Jesus for his burial. And there's this whole big conversation. I mean, there's conversation among the disciples who are saying, well, that's a really expensive perfume. She could have sold it and gave it to the poor, but she's quote unquote wasting it on Jesus. She's pouring all this out on him. For people who maybe know the Bible story, might remember the price tag for that jar of perfume was 1 year's wages. So if Mary can do it, we can do it.
Wow.
Are we fundraising? Of course we're fundraising. And it's not just fundraising for us. She was pouring out part of the substance of her life in love at the feet of Jesus. That is exactly what we're also trying to do. If I preach about that and never do it, come on, right? There's no integrity. There's no integrity to that. Isn't it great that she did this thing? It's a completely different experience. It's much more raw. It's much scarier. It's a sacrifice and we feel it. I'm not going to lie. We have different financial conversations now than we used to. But it's totally the right thing to do. It's totally the right thing to do. And so that's how we are trying to demonstrate in a pretty clear and pretty obvious, in what is for us at least a really bold way, that we're all in on this. We're all in on the generational impact. We're all in on the kingdom building. And this is an expression of our love for Jesus.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first time I heard that, it blew me away. And it's also very challenging because there's no way in my mind could I ever imagine doing that in my place of life.
Yeah.
It's I can't even fathom it. I don't even, it doesn't make any, like I don't, well, one, I don't even know a year's wages. Right? But then even in perspective of like Mary, it's always easier to hear a story and to tell a story, but then it's different. And when you're the one who experienced the story.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. It's one thing to admire an example and it's another thing to follow it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Right.
Especially like, because right now, the way that I'm thinking about it is the moment Mary made that decision to do something like that, like you said, I can't imagine what other challenges came after that.
Yeah.
Like you just said for yourself is like, okay, now you're having different financial conversations.
Yes, we are. That's true.
What I'm curious about is if it's okay to ask you about about the challenges.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Like maybe not necessarily specifically like financial stuff with your kind of conversations you're having and stuff like that, but more so for me, when challenges come up based off of decisions that you make, right?
Yeah.
That you hope is the right decision that benefits others, you know?
Yes.
That you hope is making an impact, that you believe you're like following Jesus, right? And for others who don't believe that, but just believe in doing the right thing for somebody out of just the kindness of their heart kind of thing, whatever it stems from, then there comes the consequences being good and bad, right?
Yeah, excellent.
A negative thing, right? But just like, how do you face those challenges and like, how do you approach them? And if you can give some examples.
Yeah. So you're talking about what are some challenges that come from making big moves or bold moves or sacrificial moves? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. And I think in two ways. Okay. So one way is building the church.
Okay.
Building the facility.
Yes.
Right. Like you said, that brings a whole new set of difficulties. And like now you're dealing with all these other stuff that you necessarily didn't want to do.
Correct.
But you know what the end purpose is and the hope is. But with the limited time in my life, any times that I did do something that didn't really want to do because I was afraid or you know, all these other things it was always the biggest payoff for everything and everyone, right?
Yeah.
And growth of who I am.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I was ever, I don't, you know, it's like I never would like necessarily choose that route.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How do you deal with those challenges and how do you decide and know that this is the right decision, right?
Yeah.
For that big, because you're not just talking about your family, you're talking about families.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then on a more personal note is the other part I want to ask is how to make that. Obviously, these are two huge decisions impacting two important. Yeah.
Yeah. So let me go down a path. And if you want to go down another path, let me know. I mean, the real personal sharing I would give is that I talked years ago with a woman who's a friend and a lawyer and just a great advisor. And we're just weighing out some decision that I had to make, kind of listing out the pros and cons. And she said, it sounds like for you, Jeremy, one of the factors in weighing a decision is what is the likelihood of success? So I'm not Don Quixote. I'm not going to charge at windmills. I heard the most beautiful quote years ago, and it's something like, jump off the cliff and grow your wings on the way down. And that sounds like a great thing to say and a terrible thing to do. That's not how I roll, brother. That is not how I roll. I think part of what that has meant has been, again, a guy at church who knows me well. We played poker one time, just hanging out for fun. He goes, "You're a terrible poker player." And I said, "Thanks." And he goes, "It's because you're too conservative." And he was right. He was right. So I think there are a lot of things in my life, a lot of formative influences that have led me to be a little bit risk averse. Now, other people would disagree with me on that, but they're wrong. Like I have a lot of influences in my life that have showed me the benefits of being risk averse. Okay. So here I am now at this crossroads with my church where you cannot move forward and be completely risk averse. It's impossible. Again, my personal style is not revolution, it's evolution. It's a step at a time, it's a day at a time, it's a stage at a time. That's like one thin tree ring at a time. I love that stuff, man. That's my world. I preach it, I try to live it. And so the idea of a great big radical jump, and I've made some moves in my life. I wouldn't say I've never made it before, but some really big radical jumps, or even being in a situation that necessitated that. I'm not going to be inclined to go for that, because for all the inspirational blah, blah that I hear all the time, all these dudes like, oh yeah, I'm just going to jump off the cliff and grow my wings on the way down. Like, I've seen people who didn't grow their wings on the way down. I've seen the consequence, and I've seen it be ugly. And I thought, I don't want to end up like that. I don't want to be like that. I have so many negative examples in my life. You wouldn't believe it. And so all of that has caused me to be a little bit risk averse. And so now I'm in a situation where this is the right thing to do. It's working out fine. It's going okay. But there's some times, man, like your nervous system heats up a little bit because you're in what is, at least for me, uncharted territory. Maybe other people have done this all the time. That's fine. It's not their growing edge. It's mine. But, there's some times where your brain is on fire because you are allowing yourself to be pushed into a place, or you're trying to follow God into a faithful place where maybe it's not new for everybody, but it's new for me. And so let's say, what are the consequences of that? Well, there's benefits of that too. You do it for the benefits, but you always want to have your eyes wide open to the consequences. Jesus talked about counting the cost. I'm a part of a tradition that talked about counting the cost. So that concept of counting the cost isn't foreign to me. I really like that. That's really, really helpful. And so I think to the degree that you can count the cost, you anticipate the difficulties, and you try to mitigate against those stressors or mitigate against those frustrations or whatever. Again, I can call it physical discomfort of allowing myself to be pushed into doing things I've never done before. Like, you feel that in your body, you feel it in your brain. So part of that is self-care. Part of that changes how you pray. Part of that, I have to make sure that, yeah, kids, daddy's learning new things, but he's a little more grumpy. I mean, the kids tell the truth, man, right? The families know. The families know.
Yeah.
And so I think I would say that the stress of some of that, it lands on you in a lot of different levels, in a lot of different ways. And it is being honest about that. It's not being naive about that. It's talking to my wife about that. It's hearing from the world around me about that. With anything that you do, not just with money in the church, man, anything you do, if you allow yourself to be pushed into new and different places, there is a benefit and there is a cost. And it is having eyes wide open to both the cost and the benefit, to being a steward of the cost and a steward of the benefit both, and trying to have one eyeball on each one all the time. I think that, at least in general terms, it has meant for us so far. But like, we're still figuring it out, right?
Yeah, for sure.
We're still, ask me in a year, ask me in 2 years, ask me in 3 years. But I can say at its best, it's transformative because you're going down a road you would never have chosen if you would have been in total control of all the variables.
Yeah. So something that I really liked about what you were sharing is I'm more of a person who takes leaps.
And creative artists.
For sure.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that I'm not afraid and don't count the costs. I try to make it calculated as much as possible.
Yes.
But I was telling Capello out there that the way that I make decisions is, if I feel afraid to do it, then I should do it. And mainly if I'm afraid to do it because of my lack of ability or something of an insecurity, then I'm like, okay, I should probably do it.
Yeah.
But if it's a fear based off of how it's going to impact and hurt other people in some kind of way negatively, then I usually make a decision not to do something like that. You know what I mean? Like, that's usually how I try to gauge it. The reason why I really liked how you said it is because I feel like right now, the messages that are told primarily in the more popular sphere is like what you said, jump and grow your wings kind of thing.
I think that's inspirational, but it doesn't always end well.
Yes, exactly.
Like, you begin with dreams and you end with street pizza. That's bad.
For sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. So my wife is opposite than me.
Hey,
So
yes.
she's similar to you in that kind of
Yes,
way, right?
good Midwesterner.
For sure. Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. Like a risk averse, but why I like how you shared it is because it's like real practical ways of how you make decisions and work through those things as being risk averse to be able to take more risks.
Correct. You have to, sometimes the right thing to do is the opposite of what you want to do. And the key isn't to just default to your natural tendencies, especially if you're doing something like, I don't know, following Jesus. Because like, if you want to build a religion around following your natural tendencies, that's one thing. But if you're willing to be suspicious of your own fears and interrogate your own fears and say, okay, where does this fear genuinely inform me of an actual risk scenario? And where am I just freaking afraid? I think it's the willingness to examine those fears and let those get beneath the surface a little bit and examine those and go, yeah, it's the right thing to do to play it safe. And no, it's not the right thing to do to play it safe. Again, because what I find is that people just follow their natural tendencies, or they follow their natural tendencies worse off, and then they slap God's name on it, whatever their natural tendency is. Nope. Sometimes God's going to agree with you. Sometimes God's not. And so you have to both we should listen to our heart. Wherever the condition of our heart is, listen to your heart. We also have to listen to God's heart. And we believe that sometimes God is telling us to do the opposite of the thing that we would choose. That's Jesus in the garden. If there's another way, man, I'll take it. I'll take it. Right. But he does the thing in that moment he doesn't want to do. And that was the right thing.
So good, man. Yeah, I love it. And I'm thankful for this conversation because I think when you are figuring out your path and you have a lot of passions and you feel like in certain contexts, right? Like, so, and if you believe in God, it's like, God's leading me here and God's leading me there, you know? And if you're not in that space, you're like, I have all these passions and desires and dreams. How do I make these decisions? And I think you laying out a lot of different things, but even practical ways of how to make decisions for risk-averse or even those who take risks. But I think there's enough of those out there to say, if you take a risk, just jump and, you'll figure it out as you go down, And so for those who are not like that, I think it's really important that this space exists. So I appreciate that. There's so much I wanted to ask you. So I'll have to do another podcast.
I'm not going anywhere, brother. Okay. I love you. This has been fun. Let's do it again.
Yeah, man. Awesome. Okay. You just gave us so many quotes already in such a condensed period of time, but what are your top 2 favorite quotes?
Oh my goodness, my top 2 favorite quotes. Okay, so let me give you my top 2 favorite quotes today.
Yes, exactly. Now,
they're not like my favorite quotes ever.
Okay.
But they're my 2 favorite quotes today. So on Monday, coming up, I am preaching at a conference on the East Coast, and I'm talking about Isaiah 43. And there are 2 quotes around Isaiah 43 that I really love. So Isaiah 43 takes place in and around the time of the exile. So this is where God's people were forcibly removed from their home and taken to another place. Let's see if I can recall correctly. They were in a particular moment in time where the things that had happened previously, their previous life was unavailable to them, but their future life was yet unclaimed. And I don't want anybody to be exiled. I don't want anybody to be forcibly removed from their home. There's a lot we don't have in common with them. We're in the midst of the air conditioning. We're not in the midst of exile. That's not our life. But what we do have in common, many of us, is that there is a former life that is unavailable to us. And a future life that is yet unclaimed. And I do believe at best God is leading us into the future. The second quote from that scripture that really rings really loudly in my ears, which literally I just got a hold of this morning, so this is fresh. The first half of Isaiah 43 is a lot about remembering. So remember what God did, remember what God did, remember what God did. And then halfway through verse 18, I think it says, forget it, which is crazy. Like, remember, forget the former things. And so, like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to forget and remember? Well, if you look at it closely, you're supposed to do both.
Interesting.
Meaning, remember what God has done in the past. Let God's faithfulness in the past resonate into your life, into eternity. Remember what God has done and hold that memory, and don't turn that memory into an idol. So I think that for me has been helpful straight out of the scripture so far as I'm concerned, to remember all the good things that God has done and to hold those, and to know that what we now know as the old thing God has done was for those people in that time not an old thing, it was a new thing, which is why the scripture says watch for the new thing.
Wow. That's crazy. That's super good.
Thanks. That's not my material, man. It's out of the book. It's out of the book.
Oh, man, I want to listen to that again. I just recently finished a song, like, for the first time, like, after 3 years. It's called In the In-Between.
Yeah.
I was at church. My aunt asked me, like, how's business and stuff. And I was like, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
But, it's a day at a time. And it's a step at a time. She was like, yep, that's how you should do it. That's how you should live. So I started writing, and I was like, a step at a time, but each step feels like a mile. 10 steps feels like 52,000 feet. And then thinking about the in between was like, when I think about milestones and looking back, you know, it kind of brought me to this process of like, it may be, I feel like I want to reach the summit and then every time I plummet kind of thing. But I look back and it's not about, I want to get to the summit and reach the top, that there's only one layer of one summit. But when I look back, actually I conquered, like in those 52,000 feet, I conquered a mountain range behind me. And I look back and the milestone is more like a peak than it is just a pile of rocks that we stack. So it's easy to think that one step at a time is like, hey, you know, these baby steps, just take one step. It's like, no, that one step is, who knows what that's going to take to do that one step.
Yes.
And I think like even like thinking about making decisions or like being a master of integration or the decisions of the detour, it's kind of like whatever that it's going to be, it's not as easy all the time or as simple as that. Whatever and the process that it takes, it's all going to lead to where, as long as you're following, it's where you're going to supposed to be and it's going to lead you. And I think we were talking about earlier, to sum it up, it's like, really love the detour piece. It's like detour is the way. And that no matter what, it's going to lead you to your original direction, just a different path. It doesn't mean you're going the wrong way.
And I would say it also matters if you believe there's a God guiding your steps. I really do think that that matters. We can talk about the universe or whatever impersonal force that may be guiding our lives. I like that that is a spiritual perspective, but without making too much of ourselves. To believe that there is a God that guides our steps changes our relationship with the path that we're on.
Yeah. So good. Okay, last thing. For those who are in their path and they're trying to make a decision and they have a lot of passions and desires.
Yes.
You know, they're like, I'm not a master of anything, but I have all these other things I want to do. What kind of tip do you have for those people? How they should make a decision, what they, like, how to go about it?
So here's the first thing that comes to mind. May or may not be helpful. My wife and I have talked about this before in terms of values. You could call it passions. I think that would be fine. The word we've used is values. So we have a really long list of values, long list of things we care about, long list of things that we are passionate about, but we can only live out so many of those values and so many of those passions at a time. Simple one, we've always had the value of parenting, but we haven't always been parents. So you can't fully live out that value until you're a parent. And so we were able to practice and live some other kind of values. Well, guess what? Once you have kids and you're doing that and you're trying to show up for your kids, that crowds out the opportunity and the space for other values for you to live. And so we have this, we know we have, other people might not know, right? But we know we have this long, long list of values, long list of things we care about, long list of things we're passionate about. But in this season of life, there's only a slice of that spectrum. There's only part of that range that we can actually live. And we miss that other stuff. I'm not going to lie. But when the kids are out of the house, we're going to miss them. You know, so what's the breadth of your passion? And then what portion of that breadth can you most fully live in this season of your life? And if you can do it all equally, praise God, you're spoiled for choice. But sometimes the season in life will make the decision for you.
Yeah. So good, man. Thank you. Well, thank you for joining us on the Master of Integration podcast. If you're on a detour, it feels like a detour. You're going the right way. When making decisions, be suspicious. Be suspicious of your fears.
Yeah. Get to know your fears.
Get to know your fears.
Interrogate your fears. Yeah.
Where can they find you?
Yeah. So circleofpeacechurch.com is the website. We've got a pretty simple YouTube page. Our YouTube page is called Circle of Peace Live. You have to have that word live in there. If you just do Circle of Peace, you will end up with a Ziggy Marley video. Nothing wrong with Ziggy, but circleofpeacechurch.com, Circle of Peace Live on YouTube. And most importantly, come and meet us in person. We're people and we're in this for people.
So awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
You're the best.
Yeah, you are, man. Oh, thank you. All right. Thank you. Peace. Much love.